Listen to the sound, the high-pitched beep of a contactless payment terminal. It's the soundtrack of the modern consumer's daily panic. Look at the guy in line at the artisanal coffee shop. Let's call him Julian. Julian makes $85,000 a year. He's wearing $300 noise-canceling headphones to block out the friction of the city, but he can't block out the noise in his own head. He taps his matte black piece of plastic against the machine. Processing. Flashes on the tiny screen. For 3 agonizing seconds, Julian stops breathing. His heart rate spikes. His palms sweat slightly. He looks away. He stares at the ceiling. He stares at the barista. He will look anywhere except at his own phone to check his balance before making the purchase. The transaction is approved. He exhales. The dopamine hits. He grabs his $7 iced latte and walks out, feeling like he just won a victory. He didn't win anything. He just survived another micro-roulette spin in the great casino of the middle class. We live in an era of obsessive tracking. People track their deep sleep cycles. They track their macros, their daily steps, their screen time. They watch a GPS map to see exactly where their food delivery driver is on a Tuesday night. But when it comes to the single most critical metric of adult survival, the ledger of their actual life energy, they choose absolute, deliberate blindness. They refuse to open their banking app. Modern cowardice isn't retreating from a physical battlefield. It's the deliberate refusal to look at a 5-inch glowing screen because the math on it will shatter the fragile illusion of status you've purchased on credit. Julian isn't afraid of the app. He's afraid of the mirror. This is the phenomenon of the premium broke. The individual who looks perfectly wealthy on social media drives a leased vehicle with a pristine exterior, but runs a daily gauntlet of financial terror every time an auto-pay date approaches. They are navigating a high-voltage financial maze, entirely blindfolded, hoping the cheese at the end of the week, the direct deposit, arrives before the trap snaps shut on their overdraft limit. The premium broke lifestyle is an exhausting performance. It requires a constant background hum of anxiety. You buy the expensive clothes to project competence to strangers, but inside, you feel like a fraud who is one unexpected medical bill away from total insolvency. Why do rational, educated adults do this? They convince themselves that ignorance is a shield. If I don't look at it, it isn't real. They treat their bank balance like a terminal illness diagnosis. If you don't go to the doctor, you can't be sick. But the math doesn't care about your emotional comfort. The math compounds in the dark. While you are sleeping, while you are swiping away the low-balance notifications, the algorithms are wide awake. They are calculating the daily interest on the revolving credit card debt. They are processing the phantom subscriptions you forgot to cancel 6 months ago. The blindness doesn't pause the bleeding. It accelerates it. You trade long-term financial survival for 5 minutes of psychological relief. The institutions know this. They don't just tolerate your fear of logging in. They bank on it. They have built billion-dollar infrastructures around your emotional paralysis. The most profitable consumer in the Western world isn't the one who spends the most. It's the one who spends and never audits. The system relies on you keeping your eyes tightly shut, because once you open them, you see the true mechanism of the cage. The moment you refuse to look at the screen, you aren't pausing the game. You are handing the controller to the opponent. Let's dissect the anatomy of this deliberate blindness. It's Friday night. You are exhausted. You've spent 40 hours taking orders from a manager who has half your intelligence, Your cognitive load is completely depleted. So you open a food delivery app. You order $35 worth of sushi. You don't check your banking app first because if you see a balance of $12, you might realize you are actively starving your future to feed your present. You want the illusion of control. Society treats financial avoidance like a quirky character flaw. A funny internet meme about being scared of the ATM receipt. It isn't funny. It's an evolutionary glitch weaponized against you. In nature, when an animal is overwhelmed by a predator, it freezes. It plays dead. It shuts its eyes and hopes the threat passes. You are playing dead in a digital ecosystem that feeds on the paralyzed. You think closing the app shields you from stress, but the algorithms calculating your late fees, the auto-renewals processing at 2 in the morning, they don't sleep. Anxiety is not a byproduct of modern retail banking. Anxiety is the foundational product. The consumer matrix requires a stressed, terrified population because a calm individual audits their life, and audits destroy profit margins. They built a world where spending is frictionless, but auditing is a nightmare. You can purchase a depreciating asset with double-click facial recognition. 1 second. No friction. The cheese is delivered directly to the wheel. But finding out exactly how much interest you're paying, that requires deciphering financial jargon designed to make you feel incredibly stupid. They engineered the darkness. Phase 1. The ostrich algorithm. The system loves a consumer who operates on vibes instead of spreadsheets. The banks have armies of psychologists on payroll. They know if they keep you comfortable enough to survive, but terrified enough to avoid the numbers, you become a passive revenue stream. You pay a $20 fee for dipping below the minimum balance. You pay $14 for a streaming service you haven't watched in months. You pay $35 in overdraft protection because that sushi order pushed you into the negative. This is the modern maze, a labyrinth of recurring charges where the walls are built out of your own apathy. The frictionless checkout is the polished floor of the trap, designed to slide the pack toward the debt cliff before they smell the poison in the bait. You're bleeding out through 1,000 tiny paper cuts, and you absolutely refuse to look at the wound. Phase 2. Weaponized avoidance. You tell yourself you'll look next week, when the paycheck hits. But things never calm down. You trade your actual freedom for the fleeting comfort of not knowing how trapped you truly are. Your nervous system keeps the score. You feel it in your chest when an unknown number calls, and you instantly assume it's collections. You're standing on the train tracks, hearing the whistle, feeling the vibration in the pavement, and consciously choosing to blindfold yourself. The emotion is irrelevant now. We are stripping away the psychological excuses and putting the raw data on the table. You say you don't look at the screen because it causes you stress, but let's calculate the exact monetary price of that specific emotional comfort. Let's do the math on passive leakage. This is the tax you pay for keeping your eyes closed in a system designed to pick your pockets. Imagine a standard consumer profile. Let's say you make decent money, but you are terrified of your own ledger. You have 3 streaming services, a premium fitness app you haven't opened since January, and a monthly box of artisanal snacks you forgot to cancel. Let's value that at $50 a month. Because you never audit your transactions, you occasionally mistime an autopay. Your account dips below zero twice a month, triggering a $35 overdraft penalty each time. That is another $70. Then there is the credit card. You carry a floating balance of $6,000. You only pay the minimum because looking at the total balance makes you physically nauseous. With a 24% annual percentage rate, You are bleeding roughly $120 a month in pure interest. Let's add up the cowardice tax. 50 in ghost subscriptions, 70 in penalty fees, 120 in vaporized interest, $240 a month. Every single month, just evaporating into the digital ether. Now let's translate that abstract number into the only currency that actually matters: your finite human life. If your take-home pay is $25 an hour, you are trading nearly 10 hours of your existence every 30 days just to fund your own financial blindness. You are giving up an entire working day, waking up to an alarm, sitting in traffic, tolerating corporate nonsense, solely to pay the banks for the privilege of not logging into their API. Over a decade, that avoidance costs you nearly $29,000. Math does not possess empathy. It is an apex predator that feeds exclusively on the disorganized. It doesn't care if you had a tough week. It doesn't care if you felt overwhelmed. The numbers compound regardless of your emotional state. You treat your capital like a renewable resource. It isn't. Every dollar that leaks out through a forgotten subscription is a brick you could have used to build your fortress. Instead, you hand those bricks to the exact institutions that keep you trapped. You are running furiously on the wheel, sweating out the prime years of your biological existence, while the retail banking sector casually turns the resistance dial higher every time you refuse to look at the dashboard. Phase 3. The Ledger of Ruin. When you refuse to look, you are giving implicit consent to be legally looted. The financial institutions have normalized this behavior. They call it seamless convenience. They auto-enroll you in paperless billing, not to save the environment, but to remove the physical reminder of your bleeding. An envelope arriving in the mail is friction. It forces you to look at the wound. A silent digital deduction is frictionless. It is a financial parasite operating in the broad daylight of your own apathy. This is the brutal reality of the liquidity trap. You might have a respectable salary. You might wear designer brands and park a sleek crossover in your driveway. But your actual cash flow, the oxygen of your adult survival, is being choked off by 1,000 microscopic leeches. You are technically generating income, but you are retaining absolutely zero power. You are funding the lavish lifestyles of bank executives with the spare change of your deliberate ignorance. And the most terrifying part: the damage isn't just mathematical, it is deeply neurological. By avoiding the micro pain of the daily audit, you reinforce the macro fear. Every single day you don't look at the screen, the monster in the dark grows larger in your mind. You aren't avoiding the reality of being financially unstable. You are actively guaranteeing that you remain unstable permanently, because you cannot defeat an enemy you refuse to measure. Phase 4. The silent hemorrhage. You sit there, paralyzed by the notifications on your lock screen, hoping for an external miracle. You pray that a tax refund or a microscopic holiday bonus will magically reset the board and erase the anxiety. But a one-time injection of cash doesn't fix a fundamentally broken behavioral loop. If you pour a gallon of fresh water into a bucket with 50 holes at the bottom, you are still going to die of thirst in the desert. The system wants you to believe that checking your balance is an act of punishment. They want you to associate your money with dread, because a terrified consumer is a highly profitable consumer. There is no rescue party coming. No one is going to swoop in and audit your life for you. The government won't do it. Your employer certainly won't do it. They prefer you financially desperate. because a desperate worker never negotiates. The only way to stop the bleeding is to turn on the lights in the slaughterhouse. You have to look at the numbers every single day. This is the protocol of shock inoculation. You are terrified of your banking app because you only open it when you are backed into a corner. You associate the login screen with impending doom. You break that psychological association through sheer, relentless repetition. You wake up. You make your coffee. And before you let the digital noise of the world infect your brain, you log into your ledger. You look at the balance. You look at the pending transactions. You look at the exact amount of interest the machine extracted from you while you slept. At first, it will physically hurt. Your heart will race. You will feel the sting of regret. Good. Feel it. Let the reality of your current position burn away the childish delusion that ignorance equals safety. After a week, the panic will subside into frustration. After a month, the frustration will forge itself into cold, calculating anger. And anger, unlike anxiety, is an incredibly useful fuel. True financial peace is not a sudden epiphany. It is the slow, deliberate assassination of your own financial illusions. When you audit your life daily, you strip the emotional power away from the numbers. A negative balance stops being a reflection of your self-worth and becomes a simple mathematical error to be corrected. You spot the parasitic subscriptions the moment they hit. You anticipate the auto-pays. You take your hands off your eyes and put them firmly on the steering wheel. Phase 5. The daily autonomy. This is how you build the invisible empire. The concept of stealth wealth isn't just about hiding luxury. It is about operating entirely outside the emotional frequency of the consumer pack. The people who actually escape the system don't post screenshots of their portfolios. They don't need external validation because their dopamine doesn't come from a barista handing them a $7 cup of ice. Their satisfaction comes from the absolute, impenetrable silence of sovereignty. Think back to that guy at the coffee shop holding his breath at the payment terminal. Now imagine the absolute inverse. Imagine knowing your baseline survival is secured for the next 6 months. Imagine a random Tuesday where your car breaks down, the mechanic quotes you $800, and your pulse doesn't even elevate. You don't have to shuffle funds. You don't have to put it on a credit card at 24% interest. You just pay the invoice and go about your day. That is what lies on the other side of the daily audit. You trade the fleeting comfort of avoidance for the permanent armor of liquidity. The pack treats the banking app like a dark maze, terrified of hitting a dead end. But when you memorize the blueprint of the trap, you can walk right through it, take the cheese, and leave the spring completely untouched. You must become financially unsinkable. Not by earning millions, but by ruthlessly plugging every single leak in the hull of your ship. Society wants you drowning, desperately paddling to keep your head above water, because a drowning man will grab onto any high-interest lifeline they throw at him. Stop thrashing. Look at the water level. Phase 6. The exit strategy. The machine relies on your cowardice. It budgets for your avoidance. Every time you refuse to look, a bank executive gets a slightly larger bonus. It is time to defund your own captors. Open the app. Stare at the wreckage. Own it. And then, brick by brick, build your way out of the dark. If you want to keep playing roulette with your debit card, keep scrolling. Go watch another video about morning routines that won't fix your broken ledger. But if you're ready to stop bleeding in the dark, hit the like button, subscribe, and join the ones who are quietly dismantling the machine. If you made it this far, drop a comment saying, "Illuminated Ledger." Everyone else will think you're insane. But we'll know you finally opened your eyes. My name is Daniel Rath, and I'll see you outside the maze.